Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Of course, my name is Adam. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've been getting great feedback, and I think that we're going to be on a little bit of a push to really call some attention to the stewardship piece of our faith and our fitness. This is something that I just feel like the Lord's been dealing with me about, and I'm gonna pass it on. I'm gonna try not to make these too long. I prefer shorter episodes as one, they do perform better, but two, I just don't think people need a belabored point. If it's a conversation, that's one thing. But if it's just me talking, you don't need to hear me for, an hour talking. But unless you're interested in those things, and then we can, set up something else to have more long form kind of stuff. But the kind of title or theme of this episode is kind of responsibility without guilt or shame. Um, I kind of want to title it something like, if God gave you a body, here's what you need to do with it. Right? Um, and if you're listening to this and you have a body, you have ears, and God gave you something beautiful and wonderful, something amazing. The human body is extraordinary. The more you research it, I mean, they've been researching it, the just the brain alone for the last few hundred years, and we still don't know that much about it. We know a little bit, but it's extremely complicated and amazing. So, um, the like one of the things that I really want to come kind of push back against, and if you're listening to this and you're new to the podcast, sorry, I should have done this earlier, but the point of this podcast is to help people of faith, whether you're in the business world, you're in the church, you're a stay-at-home mom, you're serving, however you're serving in life, but you have faith in Jesus and you know that God's called you to do something with your life, and that may be the very thing you're doing right now, which this is what I'm doing. My calling is to help people find their fitness and continue to invest in it so they can keep doing what God called them to do. I do other things, of course, but this is the main thing that I do. And the the point is for us to continue to look at our body not as a separate entity, but as something that God gave us to fulfill the calling and to treat it as such. So that's part of this episode. But have you ever the question I want to start with, have you ever avoided something difficult in your life, and many of us do it, and kind of put it under the I'm trusting God in this area. I'm just trusting God in this area. Um, and you know that you're avoiding doing something difficult and you're labeling it trusting God, but really you're just avoiding dealing with it because it's going to be too difficult. Have you ever done that? I have. I actually was talking to a buddy one time, and he was obviously having some like recurring kind of, for lack of a better term, triggers for like trauma in his life and things he had been through. And he's talking to me about like situations that are happening, and I'm like, that sounds like you need to talk to a counselor. And it was kind of like, well, I'm trusting God in this area because honestly, what was going on was he was terrified to actually delve into what he could feel underneath, right? So he was trusting God, but avoiding the situation, right? So the point of this is not shame or legalism or anything like that, but the point is many of us have complicated and sometimes not so complicated ways of convincing ourselves that we're doing something when we're actually avoiding something. Okay. So, but the big thing is at no point in the scriptures do we get a pass on responsibility and accountability. At no point in the scriptures do we get a pass on knowing something needs to be done and putting that under God's control when he's obviously saying, no, that's your area to take care of. I'll do my part, but you have to do your part, right? Some of this can be physical health, it could be mental health. going to a counselor, seeing a trauma therapist if that's what you need. Many people, especially men, I'll be honest, are very reluctant to go and talk about their feelings because I'll be honest with you, men tend to feel very deeply, and we're sometimes afraid by the feelings that we have, and because they are quite intense. So sometimes it's easier to just trust God with that thing or pray about it in silence or, have do a fast when really you need to go talk to somebody and go actually start dealing with this thing, like get your hands dirty in this part of your life. And that might be physically for you too. It might be something, your physical fitness. I talk to pastors regularly, and I'm never judgmental. If you know me, I'm never going to make fun of anybody who's struggling in a particular area, especially physically. Um, but I will be direct. And many times pastors are trusting God with their weight and just refusing to do anything, even though when they stand in front of their congregations and the congregation knows you're not working on this part of your life, it's a glaring indictment against your integrity and against your discipline and your call to stewardship for money. Well, the stewardship of money is no different than the stewardship of health, right? So we have to be very careful what we claim we're trusting God with and what we're avoiding. Okay. What's funny is you have this body, God gave it to you, and many times we either, when we're in the world, we treat it like a carnival, like it's a playground, and it's just going to always be there. And we don't do much different when we give our lives to the Lord. We tend to stop doing maybe the more abusive things like drugs and alcohol, maybe gratuitous fornication or whatever, like putting yourself in situations where you might be actually contracting, pathogens. But we don't do much different when we get saved or give our lives to the Lord because many times now we just eat our feelings or we act like everything must be enjoyed, in giving thanks. We just got to give thanks to the Lord, and then I can kind of eat whatever the crap I want. I gave thanks for that cake that I ate three-quarters of. You know what I mean? And that doesn't, giving gratitude does not absolve you of wisdom and stewardship. So we have to be really careful. And then we have to be careful not to just act like the body is a separate entity that is just here to house my spirit. It's the one thing that God gave you to enact his will on earth, right? You can pray, and obviously that's one way to enact God's will, but you physically go about serving with your hands and your feet, right? And if you can't get around real good, I know a lot of Christians who can barely walk, not because they're sick from some crazy situation, but they can barely walk because they just won't stop eating. They just won't stop eating junk. They just won't go for a walk. They just refuse to because they're trusting God, right? But in Genesis 2:15, it's interesting because what happens in Genesis is that God creates Adam. He creates a physical body, breathes his spirit into it. He says that it is good, the body included in that good. And then he sets Adam to a task. He gives him responsibilities, physical tasks. He's to tend and protect the garden, to take care of it, to tend the animals, to take care of them, right? He had physical duties to manage and help with these things that were good. So with this good came a responsibility to take care of it. And it's funny that many of the practices that we see in the Bible, prayer, fasting, these things actually have physical benefits to your body. They're spiritual pursuits that have physical benefits, right? And I believe that physical activity is a physical pursuit that has a spiritual benefit because it creates clarity, it creates discipline, it creates resilience, all things that go back and forth between spirit and flesh, right? They work together. I know the flesh counts for nothing according to Paul, right? But in justification, it counts for nothing. But in daily life, it counts for a lot because if you get sick and have a problem where you can't take care of yourself or you get cancer or diabetes just simply because you refuse to take responsibility for the things you eat, well, then the flesh is counting for something right there because it's completely stopping your spiritual ministry, right? So we have to be really careful how we interpret scriptures here. In Luke 12:48, the Bible talks about how um, when much is given, much is required, right? So with a blessing comes accountability, comes responsibility. Health is a blessing, comes with accountability, responsibility, right? Ephesians 5:16. Time is something that we are called to redeem. Okay? Time is the thing you have. The real limiting factor for most of us on earth is time. And it's not just time per day, but length of time. And it's interesting to me that if you take care of your body, there's a NIH study done in England where they did some correlative calculations, and they found that for every hour you spend in physical activity, like in the gym or going for a run, a walk, but intentional physical fitness, you get about 2.6 hours back. That's a 260% return on your investment. All right, there's no other guarantees like that. So if time is a limiting factor, total time, like the amount of years you're going to live, well, then taking a little time per day to exercise literally adds hours, days, weeks, months, years to your life in the long term. So that is a part of stewardship. That is taking the limitations off slightly in a lot of ways. So these verses that I'm sharing are more about you participating with what God's given you and less about trying to make you feel guilty or whatever. But the point is that everything in faith is a cooperative action. It's cooperation, right? I'm not just saved. I'm saved through my faith. Cooperative. God does the saving, I do the faithing, right? Right? So with the blessing comes responsibility, becomes accountability. I must be accountable for the things I've received. Same thing happens with my money. If or with the money God gives me. It's not even my money, honestly. He gives me money. I owe him cooperatively the first 10%. The rest is mine to do with as God would direct, right? With blessing comes accountability and responsibility. But many of us have excuses that like sound spiritual. Well, I don't have time. Well, you more likely, like most people, you mismanage your time. There's not a scarcity of time for most people. It's a mismanagement of time for most people, right? I'm working with a couple of clients actually who they're very busy people. And sometimes busy is because they actually have emergencies happening, and many times busy is they just don't manage their time well, right? So they don't have time to work out, not because the time was taken, but because they squandered it. So we have to be careful there. But that's also where working out comes in handy. It adds time, right? It actually adds productivity. So many times people will be like, well, that part of my life, God's going to take care of that. I'm trusting God with that area. Well, that's just avoidance because you can trust God and keep moving forward at the same time. When Jesus healed the lepers and said, now go and wash yourself in the pool, or wash yourself as the priest would say, or show yourself to the priest, the Bible says that they were healed as they went, right? Many times we're literally avoiding being healed in certain areas of our lives because we refuse to take responsibility and push forward in those areas because it's difficult. And to be honest with you, I understand being difficult areas, especially emotional, physical trauma, uh, spiritual abuse, physical abuse, any of those things that are areas in your life that you need to deal with, or if your weight is just a symptom of the internal turmoil that you have because you're dealing with things, that's very painful, but it's still not a reason to avoid it, right? I would encourage you, if you're that one of those people that are really dealing with the maybe trauma aspects of life and that has really affected you physically, go back and listen to the podcast I did with my wife, Kim, who she was been through, she's the toughest person I know, truly. And she's been through some hell on earth in a lot of ways with trauma. And she speaks very clearly about honoring her body for what it has done for her. It has gotten her through this. So she wants to honor it by taking care of it, right? Not avoiding it because it's just painful, right? It's just a beautiful point. But the point is that passivity and trust are not the same thing, right? Mismanagement of time is not the same thing as scarcity of time. Scarcity means you have no control over it. You got the same 24 hours a day as I do, and I have kids, I have a job. Sometimes it feels like I have multiple jobs, and somehow we figure out how to do it. I know people who are really busy running multiple companies, and somehow they figure out how to do it. I know moms that have many kids figure out how to do it. So there's not a scarcity of time. Many times it's either a mismanagement of time or it's an avoidance of the pain of the structure or the struggle. But like I said, being passive in your health is not the same as trusting God with your health, right? If we trusted God with our health, we would trust Him as we took care of that health, not just passively passed it on to Him and then did not take responsibility for the decisions we made that affected our health every single day. That's what people do. They'll be like, oh, well, I'm trusting God in this area, but they're not asking God about the things they're doing to mismanage their health. Are you asking God about your cupcakes at night? If you're trusting God with your health, then you should be trusting God with the answers to the prayers about the food you're eating, right? If it's totally His responsibility, well, then He should have a say in what you're eating. But nobody's praying about whether they should eat cupcakes or not. We're just eating them, right? So it's our responsibility. So we don't get to shirk responsibility when it's uncomfortable and take it when it is comfortable, right? We have to do either one or the other. So what does real stewardship look like, right? Stewardship in physical terms is taking the knowledge that I have right now and should be gaining knowledge because I'm a learner and I want to do better in my life. Just like I want to read, I want to know God more. So I want to read His Word. I want to spend time with Him. And I'll be honest with you, I don't do a great job of spending a ton of time in the Word like I should. That's something I need to work on. That's a stewardship thing that I need to work on. But stewardship is taking the knowledge I have right now, applying it to the best of my ability in a positive direction in my health, right? So that would be not squandering or knowingly sabotaging my health. So that could be instead of saying, you know what, tonight, I'm gonna relax. I need to unwind. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drink this bottle of wine and eat pizza, right? Those unwinding things that are supposed to relax you are technically detrimental to your health. Your unwinding, your self-care should not technically be self-destruction. The kinds of things that people are always trying to stop doing, right? Self-care, stewardship, but should be things that push you forward, not potentially hold you back, or things that you need to make excuses for and explain. Does that make sense? So we have to be real careful. Like I know plenty of people, and I've done this before, and I've talked about this before. Alcohol is probably the one thing that if I had a proclivity for something that felt genetic, it would be alcohol, right? Now, I don't have an alcohol problem. I could, but I don't. But the point is, I know people who are like, man, I'm just stressed, so I need to drink, right? That's the way they're going to unwind and they're going to get the edge off or take care of themselves. Well, technically, that's a short-term fix for a long-term internal problem. right? Stress is not going to go away. Stress isn't just going to leave. So we can't have strategies that will put me in a disadvantage for dealing with stress that's going to always be around, right? So I need strategies that are going to help me. So maybe it's go for a walk. Maybe it's go for that exercise. Maybe it's spend time in nature. Maybe it's spend time with a loved one. Maybe it's, just hold your wife's hand and go for a walk, right? Maybe that doing something that moves you forward. Now, stewardship is also about planning, moving, recovering. Planning is probably one of the biggest things that I find people who are avoiding their health usually, or they're finding the largest obstacles towards their health. Like people who are like constantly finding obstacles to their health, or like, man, I just can't seem to figure this out. I just can't get my diet on track. Planning is usually the issue because if you don't plan, you plan to fail. Like failure to plan is planning to fail. If you don't have some type of plan or some type of principles or some type of strategy or structure that you're following, then it's going to be very difficult because life is pretty chaotic. It can be. So you have to be really oriented toward planning for success, meaning maybe meal prep, maybe put your workouts on your calendar. Maybe if you're like, let's say, you got a really busy life with kids and baseball games and all this kind of stuff. Maybe it's talk to your husband or wife, and when you plan on taking the kids, maybe they take the kids to the to the game and you go to the gym, or while you're at the game you do some workout on the field or on a side field or whatever. It just planning ahead, having a plan for what you're going to do is big. All right, moving just regularly, huge thing. But the thing about stewardship is it's not obsessive. It's one of the things that is, it's less, some people will say that like maybe I'm obsessed. I've had people say that like I'm obsessed with working out or obsessed with this or that. And that may be true in some parts of my life, but um, most people who are really good in an area of their life, they obsessed about it for a minute and then it became a part of their identity. And now it's just something they do, right? So I don't obsess about working out. It's just something I do now. So that is a piece of stewardship is my exercising regularly, sleeping, walking, eating good food, making sure I'm taking care of myself, having a little fun every once in a while, but I don't ever overindulge because it makes you feel like junk. And feeling like junk is not necessarily the point here, right? And making excuses for that is not the point either. But obsession is not stewardship. Obsession is kind of a poor fixation. A core value or a part of my identity is what stewardship should be. Okay. Because God gave me this body, it is of value and I value it. And if I value it, if it's important, you should think about it each day, right? How often do you go through a day without thinking about your kids? You don't. Why? Because they're important. How often do you go through, if you're a business person, go through your life and you don't think about your business? Never, because it's important, right? And if you love Jesus, you think about Jesus every day. Why? It's important. So when people tell me, oh, I just kind of got off track, I got off track, I just couldn't get back on, it's because it's not important. If it's important, you just do it. You get it done. And it becomes part of your value. Now, as at first, you may have to obsess a little bit in order to ingrain it into your identity. But then you can learn to back down a little bit and it becomes much more fluid. For it becomes just part of my daily routine. It's just something I do. Like I'm going to work out later. It's just what's going to happen. And my family's not going to be begrudging about it. They're not going to be like, "Oh, he's always working out every day." Like, why? Because they know this is who I am. This is what I do. And then my wife's going to do something. She's going to exercise. I think she did some yoga or something earlier. She was just stretchy or bendy, something like that. And my daughter is going to be riding horses, right? We're going to do something. It's part of our value. Okay. So stewardship is not obsession. It's part of identity. So real quick, the big part here is about just showing up. The big part here is about identifying value, identifying blessing, and then taking responsibility for the stewardship of that blessing. Your body, your health. I mean, I've heard it said too many times. It's become almost cliche, but everybody's got 1,000 problems every day. But when you have a health problem, you have one problem. It's the only thing you can think about because it becomes consuming. The point is to not get to the place where the one problem is the only problem, right? Um, a friend of mine, Pastor Rob Ketterling, um, he wrote a book called Change Before You Have to. And it's because he had a heart attack and he was really scared for his life. And I remember him telling us whenever he was doing kind of the tour for his book, he said they were pulling him out of his house on his stretcher because he had to call the ambulance. He's having a heart attack. And I remember him saying he grabbed his son by the hand. His son's scared for him, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And he's just telling, he's not yelling, but like he's forcefully saying to his kids, "Everything I've told you about Jesus is true," because he thought he was going to die. Like he was trying to reinforce his son's faith or his kid's faith. Like everything I've said is true. It's amazing how a health issue, a health scare, can bring in laser focus on what's actually important, right? But we act like our health doesn't matter until there's a scare, and then it's laser focused. So the point is to start showing up now before life finds a way to laser focus you on the point, to really give you a wake up call, right? If you're in the ministry, if you're a pastor, you're a leader, you're a business leader, and you trust Jesus with your salvation, you trust Him for your family, for your finances, for everything in your life, please honor the fact that He gave you this body to do all that with and to bless you with. And start showing up now before it's too late, okay? What's one excuse you've made this week that you need to surrender? What's one excuse you've made for your health and your faith or digging into your growth? What's one excuse you've made this week that you need to surrender? Right? For me, let me think, what would mine be? Mine would be this week, I was avoiding a harder conversation because I just didn't have the energy to deal with it. I was just tired. So I have to surrender my feeling of tired for the responsibility of leading. Okay. Or go and take a nap, take care of the actual problem, which is my fatigue, because I've pushed myself a little too hard, and then go and have the hard conversation. But you don't get to just put it aside because you were tired. It still has to get done, right? Your health has to be taken care of. It has to get done, right? And if it doesn't get done now, it will get done later, right? So you either pay now or you pay later. So if this resonates with you, I just want to encourage you, share this with somebody in ministry who's running on empty. Maybe you got a friend, maybe you got a pastor buddy, maybe you've got you know, a believer, a friend in the church who is neglecting their health, and you've been talking to them about it. Just share this episode with them. I would love to hear. I would love to hear, you know, that people are spreading this around because I mean, there's just so many of us believers who have so much to give, and we shouldn't be dying the way the world's dying. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't be dying of heart disease. We shouldn't be I'm gonna be honest with you. This might sting a little bit. We should not be dying from the ramifications of two of the seven deadly sins, being a sluggard and being a glutton. Gluttony is a thing. It's one of the seven deadly sins. Being a sluggard, being lazy, not taking responsibility. Laziness is not necessarily like you just don't do anything. Laziness is an apathy. It's a disconcern with what's actually important. And you want to do what you want to do, right? There's very few people who are just lazy, who just don't, who just don't do anything. What really happens is laziness is really a symptom of not taking responsibility for the thing that's actually important right now. So we as believers should not be dying of gluttony. We shouldn't be dying of heart disease and diabetes. We shouldn't be. We should be taking responsibility to steward those things. And if you're having trouble with those areas of your life, I would love to have a conversation with you. I would love to help encourage you in those areas. I'd love to help create a strategy for you that could maybe set you up for winning in the future. And if that's you and you want to chat, reach out. My email is adam@adambraud.com, Braud. It's my last name, just like on the podcast. If you follow me on Instagram, it's my name, Adam@adambraud. Hit me up with a message. Would love to talk to you. But if you are winning in this area, keep winning. If you're having trouble, start showing up real small on a daily basis, real small, and then slowly let that build over time. Okay. You know why? Because God's called you to do great things. He's called you to touch many lives in whatever specific way He's gifted you to do that. But you have to be physically fit enough to carry that mantle. You have to be able to carry that call. And it's your responsibility to make sure that you're physically capable, right? It's not God's responsibility to make sure you can walk. And, if that you can walk because you were overweight. It's not God's responsibility to manage what you eat. It's not God's responsibility to make sure you're going to the gym and taking care of yourself. That's your responsibility. He does all the other work. Okay. So hopefully this encourages you. If you want to reach out, I would love to hear from you. If not, share this with somebody. We'd love to hear more reports of people's lives being touched. But other than that, let me just tell you, God loves you. He's a call for your life, and your fitness is a part of that call. Have a great day.